Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Say What. This is Kristen Watt, and I am being joined by Jason. We are back in the game, sir.
Hi.
Thank you. Well, first of all, if you're a regular listener, on the show, then you know that we had a little scheduling difficulty over the last couple weeks. And then, Jason, I know you said you started to watch it. Last week was hilarious. So I did a Facebook Live episode because Matthew Perry had passed. And I don't know, it just like hit me in a weird way. Not so much him, but like we were talking about, I'll be there for you. And just talking about like the connection, between pop culture figures, musicians, and people. Like we don't know them, but it affects us so deeply, like when they pass and why, so we deep dived into that. But the funniest part is I alluded to it many times on the episode as people could see on full display the importance of post-production and editing and why I am not a tech person and you are. So I tried to do a green screen and half my face was cut off for half the episode. I don't even know. So I am so happy to be back, not on camera and just recording. It was, you know what though? My point in all that was the show must go on, right? Like, so if you can't find one way to make something work, you find another way. That's tenacity at its finest. So we made it happen. But I am very glad to be back on just audio with post-production.
Can I just take a moment here and say this real quick? Because this is the thing of pulling the curtain back a little bit. Like I saw you in person last night. And it was the first time. Unexpectedly. It was the first time I had seen you, first time I'd really had a conversation with you and I'm not going to go far into the woods with this. What I will say is I sincerely apologize to your listeners, your fans, because I know this show has become something of a destination for a lot of people. And the fact that my bullshit caused a wrinkle in the plans and it had altered your schedule, I take full responsibility and I sincerely apologize, and I'm making every effort for this not to be a thing ever again. I'm sorry, Chief.
I appreciate that, but you know what, Jason, this is the thing, and it's actually interesting because that will just come. It's just a component to today's subject matter, which is reality check. Life happens, and life is not perfect. It does not go as we plan. It's brutal. And I was really thinking about this actually during this unexpected sabbatical between, our schedules, which was that, when I started, when you first approached me about doing a show and when we decided to do this, I was like, okay, what's my theme going to be? And then, you had made the cartoon graphic and I was like, cool. Oh, I want to be a little more professional. So we changed the imaging. And then it was like stories that unite, heal, and inspire. Now, I think I'm still going to just in the background stick with that. Those are the things that I want to do. I want to promote unification and healing and inspiration. But I also think that, as I've mentioned ad nauseum since the beginning of the show, as the people who do listen, and I mean, I don't know how many people actually listen, but I do know I have gotten feedback from people in my circles and in my community. And it's interesting because the people who tend to listen regularly are kind of surprising to me. It's not some of the people that I would have expected. But I think I'm hoping that people are getting to know me a little bit better because there is more to me than I think a lot of the folks who've met me over the last several years kind of have this image, this expectation, this way I have presented myself for the last several years. And that's all very authentic. That is who I am. But it's like when you go to work, you aren't you're your work version of yourself at work, right? And then at home, you're yourself. They're both true. It's just the professional I hate to say polished, but you know what I mean? Like there are expectations when you walk into your place of employment, or if you are part of an organization, like you have to represent that in a certain way. You can't just say any damn thing you want. And so I think because of the work I've been involved in and the people that I've been involved with over the last 4 or 5 years, it has required a constant micromanaging of messaging and language and topics. And and what I have been peeling back these onion layers this last year, as I have alluded to, it's not that I'm just abandoning all that. It's just that there's more to me than this very professional version, I guess. And so this show has been really therapeutic for me in the sense of just being able to speak openly about whatever. And I think that I initially thought this show needed to be kind of on theme with what people expect from me. And that just doesn't work every week for me, because the truth is there's so much going on in the last 4 weeks. And I don't know, I did my Facebook Live episode, and then we did a recorded episode about my trip. Other than that, in that month, so much has happened in my life, your life, in the world. And it just, and in so many little nuances and experiences that I've encountered, or it's hard sometimes to find, you always talk about the silver lining, right? Like
Right.
finding the silver lining. And I do believe that they exist 90% of the time. There's just sometimes that other 10%, it's just shit. It's just shit. There's nothing you can do but acknowledge that's what it is. And I think learn to not find a silver lining, but just acknowledge this is a bad situation with very few good answers. And we just cope with the reality of our lives and the world that we live in. And if you can't find a silver lining here, then you hopefully can find other components of your life that bring you joy, or ways you can serve, or whatever. But I'm finding it difficult right now to stick on topic to stories that unite, heal, and inspire, because sometimes what I want to talk about isn't those things. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
But at the same time, this is where this platform is important, because this gives you your opportunity. You have full reign over what goes on in this space. So if you need to use this platform as your time to vent, or to have an emotional dump, as I call it, that's what things like this are for. And okay, it doesn't necessarily tie into your mantra, inspiring, healing. Life's not always going to be like just like you're saying. But you're not the only one who's going through this shit. And there could be people that listen to what you have to say on an episode that may not be overly inspirational or what have you, but they're dialed in and they can relate because they're going through the same thing or something very similar. That's what podcasting is all about. And
I think I'm learning that. And I also think that it's not that I didn't know it, but I think I've been faced with it recently. And I think many people can relate I'll just focus on that unite, heal, inspire theme. That doesn't always mean you're going to have the feel good butterflies at the end of an episode. I think it's just representation. I think that can mean a lot of things. And that could also mean, oh man, I just feel at peace that I am not the only one going through this. Sometimes it's not, oh, I got an answer, or I got this, epiphany of things. It's just feeling like there's a community that's empathizing with what you're thinking at the same time. So I'll go on that tangent. We'll focus on that. So I wanted to call this week's episode Reality Check, because Man, I feel like my whole life's been a freaking reality check. Like it's not like I had this great, fantastic, smooth ride up until recently, and then I got a reality check. I just feel like it's a constant theme in my life. And I think for many people, that is the case in a lot of areas, but I'll tell you what inspired it. And we can go down who knows how many rabbit holes from here because it really applies to everything. I had a situation in the last actually a couple situations, but one in particular that occurred just in the last couple weeks. And while you and I were not as in tune or in communications, and it was this, and I had the opportunity yesterday, totally unexpectedly, to explain what the word privilege means to somebody. And now there are times where, you know, it's become almost this like evil word to use the word white privilege. It exists, it's a thing, and most people like just hear that word. It's like feminism. People like have this like these associations and assumptions of what that means, and oh, we hate men. Like that's not even the case. But when you use the word white privilege, it's very triggering, particularly to white males, by the way.
Right.
I don't get offended when people say that because I'm aware of my own privilege, which is hilarious considering the condition of some of the aspects of my life, but yet I still have it. And this wasn't even really in particular to white privilege, but just privilege and talking about socioeconomic privilege. And we're not hating on people who, and I'm not hating on anybody, but I'm just calling it out for what it is. We have a situation where we are at the end of, we're in the final chapter for a lot of the baby boomers' lives. They're in their 70s, you know, they're facing health problems, whatever. Like they're in that final chapter of their story. And what's happened is we have a lot of baby boomers who grew up in a time where people could work one job, have a house, put food on the table. If you're lucky, maybe take a family vacation once a year, put some money aside in savings, have a pension. You know, they were able to go to college if that's what they chose to do, and they didn't come out $100,000 in debt with interest rates that never allow you to pay them off. There was no such thing as a credit score, mind you, back in those early days of that generation. And so what we have now is a bunch of folks in between 70 and 80 who have their homes paid off. They live on retirement and Social Security and their pensions. They eat ham sandwiches and go out and play steak bingo and do, you know what I mean? Like they just kind of live this very, the all-American dream, right? That they were promised. They're the last generation living that dream. The rest of us didn't grow up in that. We don't have that. It's not a choice. One mistake at 22 will ruin you till you're 40, like financially, your credit's like, you know what I mean? And then we also, as cost of living changed and inflation, but like all that went up, but pay didn't. And then you had this socioeconomic pay discrepancy between, you know, and now we're shaming people like you don't work hard enough, you're not working 4 jobs. Like I think I've mentioned it to you before. When I moved to Michigan, I was like, what is this bullshit that everyone is like, it's like a badge of pride. I got 3 jobs. I'm working 100 hours a week. Dude, why? Like, why are you bragging about that? That is shameful. That is shameful that people have to do that to put food on the table. And now you have, if you're not a 2-income household and maybe a couple side gigs and selling, you know, Avon or Color Street nails, I don't know how you're putting food on the table. Like, and so we could do a whole episode on how we got here. Like, we might do like a 10-part episode on how we got here as a state of country, right? But
a mini series.
But the focus of the reality check is that these baby boomer generation have this very entitled and privileged attitude toward young people toward an obliviousness to what the hell is going on in everyday working families. And we had a situation where we had someone in that generation make a comment that in my own community, that food insecurity is not a thing. Jason, I almost came up out of my skin. And this is, we live in a small town. Okay. So like, we've got food pantries. We've got people that donate all day long and manage these food pantries and like of their own volition. And then we have organizations. And I am telling you, 62% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, period. That's more than half. And there's like 12 people who own all the wealth, right, in the country. So what we have now, and I heard a presentation, actually. I went to our local council meeting on Monday night. I had not been in a while. And I went, and a dear friend of mine who is the board chair of one of our youth organizations here locally was giving a presentation about the youth assistance or what have you, and was giving their financial income guidelines. So let me reality check anyone listening who doesn't get it. You qualify to get youth assistance, meaning your child could be provided band instruments, driver's ed training, counseling services, all kinds of stuff that is income contingent. If you are a family of 5 making under $77,000 a year, $77,000, you are considered low income, because that's the reality of a family of 5. So let's go down to like 64,000 on a family of 4. That is abysmal. Like, I remember growing up and like the goal was like, man, if you made $100,000 a year, you are filthy rich. You could afford to go on a cruise. You could have a nice house. You could get a good car. You're okay.
Yeah.
And now that's like a freaking joke. It's a joke. And I don't know, this hit me in such a way that, one, I get it if you're like out of touch with reality in the billionaire class, and you just like, if you had to live on what I make, you would jump out the window and shoot yourself on the way down. Like, you wouldn't even know how to function in that world. But I'm talking about just people who worked, like went to work, worked in a little factory, made $3 an hour. I don't know, back in their day. But it's not even just about how much money you bring in. It's about the system that we exist within. So the cost of food, the cost of housing, the interest rates, credit scores, the predatory payday loans, it just all the shit. And going to college, and then your kids are in debt forever. Like, it's the machine of capitalism, like at its finest. And we somehow bought it. We bought and paid for this. We bought into this bullshit. Not me personally, but people in the 70s and then in the 80s. And then it's accumulated to a point where the greed of our country and our economic system, like, I just physically, it makes me sick, because I see it firsthand every single day in my town, on our community forums, people I'm talking to at the coffee shop, people that I work with, in different avenues. The struggle is real. Small business owners, man, like, people busting their ass, and it just sucks. And if people like us in working families don't have that disposable income to go to the restaurants and go shopping, then our small business, which is the backbone of our communities, collapses. And then you have, like, it's a domino effect. And so, like, you are blessed. You work, it's a lot, because you have a union job. And we were just talking before the show about, it's not 100% yet, but like, it does seem from the news that the UAW is kind of coming up with with certain, I know there's a lot of nuances to that, but like, there was some resolution, like some capitulation, but also some wins for the workers at these auto plants. And for me, that's what the power of a union is about, is collective bargaining and making sure you're not screwed for the work. You are getting equal pay for the equal input, and the profits that you are helping create for these billionaire class CEOs. And to have somebody in my own community who volunteers, works daily with elderly, with children, to sit here and say that we don't have food insecurity and that's all a bunch of hogwash, I literally wanted to come out of my skin. And that was just like the beginning of like the elephant in the room, you know, and it's really a symptom of the bigger problem, which is that generation has never had to live the way our generation lives in this world. Their parents didn't have to live like that because their parents grew up in the Depression. So they understood, you know, they got the New Deal, they got Social Security, they got social programs that helped uplift people out of poverty. And then the baby boomers reaped the benefits of the pain of of the greatest generation. And then they jacked it up and voted in a bunch of assholes who were greedy, and here we are. And then they're like gaslighting us that we're crazy. We're just not working hard enough. We didn't go to enough school. Used to, you'd go get a little associates at the junior college and you could get a little job and be like an LVN, and now they'd make less than Kroger employees. You know what I mean? They're just saving lives and, you know, putting drugs in your IV. Like, we don't need to pay them, right? It's like, so now you have to have a fucking master's in nursing. You might as well, you know what I mean? Because, yeah, but if you get your master's, that's more debt. That's more money you have to invest into our educational system, and then you just paying it off for the rest of your life. There is no such thing as a collective consciousness of being debt free. Like, debt free is not good for the GDP, dude. It's just not. Nobody wants you to pay cash and be debt free, you know? So it was just a reality check for me this week that as people, like, look, we're inherently predispositioned to be oblivious sometimes and think of ourselves, and, you know, you can't fill from an empty cup, and we can read all those self-help memes and think that, but I think we live in a society now where we are so us-minded and not they-minded. Like, and that's why, you know, I've talked about my boyfriend Bernie a lot, whether you like him or not. That whole not me, us thing resonated. It resonated with millions of people because we feel forgotten. We feel, and God forbid you ask for help. You're shamed, there's questions, and like, don't even get me started. That was another reality check this week. I've known several people, and I've been in this situation myself, where if you need rental, like help with your rent, you have to be in eviction status to get help. Like, there's no proactive solutions. Like, why are we not preventing people from getting to that point? Like, why are we not preventing people from being hungry in the first place? I mean, and that's what the SNAP program is about. Like, let's not wait till it's time to go to a food pantry. Let's make sure you have at least enough to get by. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like
we've abandoned being proactive in this country, I swear.
Part of the issue with that is the people that legitimately need help have to go through a tremendous amount more of flaming hoops to get the help that they need, because some other jackoff has ruined it for somebody because they dipped into that pot, for the lack of a better term, for disingenuous reasons. And then they got caught. And now the ones that need help are like, they have to pay for the sins of another. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to play devil's advocate with you here.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right.
We're going to deep dive.
Listen, you want to roll? Let's roll. I have no problem.
Where's the Jello and the kiddie pool? Let's go. Okay. So here, I hear that a lot. And I probably even used to say that a lot. Here's where I've landed on that.
Okay.
So, okay, I want to be real I'm not trying to be polished, but I want to make sure I'm very careful in how I articulate this, because I probably should put a disclaimer. Not all baby boomers are assholes, by the way. I'm just saying.
Certainly not.
I'm just saying, and it's not even their fault. It is a symptom of their generation. It really is. And good people are just caught up in their world that they, you know what I mean? And I think learning to humanize these issues, and this is why I thought it was actually an important subject to talk about. So I'm gonna push back on you a little bit on what you just said. If you ever read, like when you open up, a product and there's like, do not put this bag over your head.
Right.
Obviously, some asshole did that, and we have to have these weird rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to social programs, assistance, help, whatever, and that it doesn't even have to be government run. It can just be whatever. This idea that, because make no mistake, it is a full-time job to obtain, maintain, and continue long-term using any type of assistance in any state, because it's different in every state. But it is a full-time job, and it is dehumanizing. And when my husband injured himself 5 years ago, or whatever it was, we went from busting our butts to build something and finally doing well to losing everything to some extent. And I went from having a lot to having to truly not just use help once in a blue moon, but actually having to get on Medicaid, having to do all this because our income changed so drastically. And there's no wiggle room for that. And when that happened, I got a huge reality check in the state of Michigan on what it entails, what it means, and what you have to do to keep it. And this narrative that's out there that people are just sitting on their couch, eating popcorn, living off the government. If that is in fact what you're doing, you still have a full-time job to maintain that. You do. Like, you literally do. But let's just say, for instance, that when people say that, like, oh, and there are people, I don't mind help, there are people out there that really need help. And because of 5% of people are abusing the system, we have to put all this government red tape. I'm going to call bullshit on that, because you know what? We only speak this way about poor people. When in reality, former President Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the guy that owns Starbucks, like all these just billionaire, millionaire people, the tax loophole, these people don't even pay taxes. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we want to find every way to give large corporate government handouts to rich people. But if you're poor and you need an extra $36 a month for groceries, you are the problem with America. When in fact, the problem is we have created a situation in this country over the last 50 years where we've made it impossible for people to survive on a job. We are not paying people what they actually should be making compared to the cost of living and the cost of profits in our country. And then we're gaslighting them and telling them they're not working hard enough. And that if people are going to sit around and abuse the system, when in fact the system was created by wealthy billionaire class people and corporations to keep us down. And then somehow it's our fault. You know what I mean? And we blame poor people. We blame people who are working families who are struggling. When in fact, we don't say shit when we give $3 trillion in tax breaks to the oil and gas companies. Like, how is that not a government handout? You know what I'm saying? And they abuse it all the time. And so I'm only pushing back on, I could give two shits about the 2% of people who abuse social programs. 2%, by the way. 2%. And typically that also gets blamed on people of color on top of that. So that's a whole other deep dive. But right. I'm just like, when in fact, mostly it is predominantly Caucasian people who are on government assistance. Like there's a narrative that, you know, it's poor Black and brown people who are creating problems for all of us, which again is just a symbol of white privilege. It's like, but the truth to me is like, I literally, if there's 20 people in my community using social programs and 2 of those 20 are sitting around and getting it when they really shouldn't be, I don't care. I personally don't care. I have a bigger problem with the other 18 people's boss making $3 million for playing golf every day while they can't make enough busting their ass after 20 years to put food on the table. Like the blame game is just going in the wrong direction, you know, in my opinion. Because honestly, if we had a just economic system, we actually would not have, we don't necessarily have to have where everyone's going to be rich, but we are the richest country in the world. We have no excuse. We should not have one homeless veteran. We should not have one person even needing food assistance. We should be able to pay our people and be able to have a productive economy that works for everybody, period. And the fact that we don't is disgusting. Like it is just pure greed, simple, plain and simple. And I think about that with other, you know, when we compare that to other countries, people are like, well, over there, they got to wait 6 months to get a surgery. Have you tried getting a doctor's appointment lately over here? It's not that much different.
Right.
And I think that's another line of bullshit. Like, okay, so maybe they do, but what's the difference between, okay, I'll wait 6 months and get a surgery and I don't have to go into bankruptcy to cover my medical bills, or over here, I'll wait 6 months and now I owe the hospital $3 million for my cancer treatment and I can't I'm losing my house. I'll wait 6 months. I'll take my chances in Canada. Thank you. Like, I don't know. I feel very strongly about this because I've lived on both sides of this coin. And to come back right now where, you know, remember when the cost of eggs was national news?
Yeah.
For weeks, we had to talk about the cost of eggs. And I just couldn't, I don't know, like my brain just exploded. Like, and this wasn't just a comment made by someone. This was like an actual argument that they wanted to like go tit for tat on in a public forum, like in a public way. I'm like, fine. Come out here and tell your community on the record you don't think they can. Like, what? I got 26 people right now who are running organizations with actual science, facts, and figures who will be begging to differ with you. You know, we got the receipts. And I think that's so insulting to families who are just trying to get by and do good for their kids and feed. And by the way, feed them food, because I don't know, Jason, if you've ever been to a food pantry. There's nothing, I'm going to tell you, and I'm very proud of my community and the people who run our food pantries here, that more than just the organizations, but our police station has one, okay, in the front lobby. And my friend Heather kind of took it on like as her project, and it's a full-time gig. She goes and finds, you know, alliances with Kroger and different grocery stores and local, you know, chicken moms that donate eggs. And like, I mean, it's a full-time gig, but it is her passion. It is her passion to feed people. My husband's passion is to grow gardens and seeds, and did the community garden at our library, like with our teen librarian, because he wants to feed people, you know. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I've literally gone and helped clean the fridge at the police food pantry and like helped them organize and stock. And we'll stock everything packed full with meat, bread, everything. It's gone in an hour. It's gone in an hour, like tons of food in an hour. And then when you go, if you really are desperate and you need something, you're like, okay, I have macaroni and cheese and beans. Like, look, it's food. And people would say, well, I mean, if you're hungry, food is food. That comes from a place of privilege. There's no dignity in it. It's like, look, yes, beans are food, but when's the last time you walked in your kitchen and went, you know what? I'll just make a bowl of beans. I'll eat that for 3 days and feed my children that too. Like, there's no dignity in the giving. So I actually, a couple years ago, helped I worked with St. Rita's, which is one of our churches here locally, to create we did an allergy friendly food drive. And we raised, in that 2 weeks, 600 pounds of food, all gluten free, vegan, dairy free, nut free, and help them create a allergy friendly section, because that's something people don't think about either.
Right.
My daughter, and you know why that happened? My daughter got diagnosed with celiacs, and this was all at the same time that my husband couldn't work and do it. Like, you know what I mean? His injury, I had surgery, and it was like, we actually had to utilize the local food pantry, and there is no options for people who have celiacs. Like, you know what I mean? So how many kids are out there being fed just so they're fed foods they should not be eating that are damaging their bodies because they have allergies? You know what I mean? So this just goes so deep for me, and it's something very personal to me because I have been in that position. And now, even though we do struggle, I still help donate food. I still help clean out pantry. Like, food insecurity is absolutely real. Rent insecurity is real. And I just gave you a stat. 62% of Americans are one paycheck away from maybe losing their house or losing a car or doing whatever. That is abysmal. And so it's just a reality. I don't know. And there's no such thing. Like, and hopefully maybe my kids might still get Social Security by the time they're old. Probably not. At the way this rate we're going, I would be surprised if we have anything left by the time my kids are grown. You know? Right. So I don't know. It's just, and then I think we could just maybe pivot to a whole other area of reality check, which is we were talking off camera before the show. I have a friend in the last couple of weeks that is getting a divorce. And I laughed because that person said to me, divorce is for rich people. Because it is. Like, I don't know if you've ever been poor and getting a divorce before, but one, it costs money to do the legality part of it. And then secondly, like, we laughed when this discussion came up, because it was like, oh, do you have any assets? Like, do you own anything? Like, what are we going to argue over the dining room table? Like, what it's just, but I didn't realize I've been highly educated in the last couple of weeks from some friends, a friend of mine who's an attorney, about the process and the laws in Michigan versus Texas, where I'm from, over getting a divorce. And I'll tell you what, I think I got a little, Charles and I wouldn't say we disagree, but he kind of gave me a different approach on it. But I was like, dude, government's all up in everybody's business trying to get a divorce in this state. Like, there's all these weird rules that, like, if you have kids, you know what I mean? There's just certain rules that prolong the process. Versus when I got divorced and lived in Texas. You know what I mean? It was just a lot of intrusiveness on my opinion, but maybe, I don't know, whatever. I don't know, man. It's just a crazy world we live in, and everything is so complicated. And I don't know why it has to be.
I don't either. And I'm at a point right now where I'm over everything. Like, yeah. You alluded to the fact where, for all intents and purposes, you know, the strike is over. The tentative agreement, at least from the company that I work for, has been ratified. And now, you know, that was a huge source of stress.
Right, right.
And, you know, even though that's a little bit more complicated, there's every other aspect of life that just seems to be more. It doesn't have to be this hard. People make it this hard based on what their end game is. And it's not across the board, but there's a lot of scenarios where it is another person's actions, influences, whatever, and that's allowed to be a dominating feature of this particular scenario, that's what makes it more complicated. You take this off the table,
Yep.
there's your answer right there. You know, um, you've mentioned the word privileged several times. Um, I liken that to entitlement, because especially with the younger demographic, there's a lot of entitlement because they have a preconceived notion of what was. Well, what was included work ethic and drive and determination and things of this nature. A lot of things that have kind of been pushed to the wayside, especially the work ethic, because everybody wants everything but don't want to do nothing for it. Not across the board, but that has been a reoccurring aura of an entire era.
Well, can I, man, we should title the shows today Devil's Advocate. That's what I'm going to play. Because wait a minute, we've talked about this before. How old are you? You're 47?
Correct.
I'm 41. So 6 years difference. It's cool. I literally have had this conversation. Well, we did. Remember, I think actually we touched on it during when we had Fritz on, who wrote the book. And who else was on the show that day? Oh, Alex, that's up at Lansing, who does the Forever Pride thing, our young people. We're talking about Gen Z, right?
Right.
And I think part of it addresses that generation, right? And I can speak to that, maybe I don't want to say push back, but maybe give a different perspective. But I think as a big picture, as a society, one, I have always adhered to a philosophy of work smart, not hard. That doesn't mean I don't work hard, but I work smart. How can I achieve these 10 steps in 3 if it's possible? Let me work smart and time manage. And what I believe, so that we do not become the baby boomers in our privilege, judging this next couple generations, right? Tech became a thing when we were young, Atari and like the first big computers and like whatever. These kids grew up in an age of technology that we did not. We didn't grow, and I will adhere that or kind of compare that to the baby boomers who grew up with pensions and one income households and, moms at home and whatever. And let me not get on an aside about moms at home and why that happened. So anyway, that's a whole other women's oppression issue. But these kids grew up in a different world where everything was on an iPad. It was technology. We email, we text, we play games. We can talk to people who are in India and play Minecraft, or I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like they have and they also have unlimited resources to education and information, which we do too now, but they literally never knew a time where you had to go in an encyclopedia and look something up and not just Google it from your phone. They grew up with instant gratification, instant access. And so we're acting like, and I don't mean necessarily we, me and you, I just mean we as a collective society in our, let's say, age group 40 to 50 right now. We are looking at a generation going, they don't work hard. They don't have a work ethic. Well, first of all, they've never had to actually they don't live in a work world that we grew up in. Number 2, as a society, can you imagine, like, no matter how hard you work, no matter how many jobs you accrue, it's just never enough because the game is fucking rigged. And so I wish I had this epiphany at 17, going, no matter what the hell I do, I'm never going to pay off this school debt. I'm never going to do, like, they're jaded. They're jaded and they get it. These kids freaking get it. They get it. They're just like, this is bullshit. Like, no matter what I do. So this is why you see this creative sphere of influencers on YouTube and whatever, these kids have figured out, these kids make more money than I do.
Right.
Because they have figured out, oh, my listeners saw it on full display last week. Right here, well, they can't see it. We're not on video. I still have that freaking green screen you gave me up. I swore I was going to figure out how to use it. I spent hours, and I mean hours, trying to figure out how to use a platform that works with Facebook Live to be able to use that. Still haven't figured it out. Joined a group. Like, I mean, I went all in. I promise you, you go find you a 16-year-old kid right now, they will have this shit done in 5 minutes. They're smart. And they know how to be creative with the tools of technology of their generation. Now, who knows what their kids are going to be doing, right? Like, and they're going to be like, why are they doing that? So I only have some pushback on, I don't like to perpetuate the narrative that kids don't have work ethic. I just think it's different. Like, they work smart, not hard. And that doesn't mean they're not hard workers. It just means they're figuring out how to do things with a quickness that have high payoffs. And we're over here like, screw that. I'm going to go work. I'm going to take a Sunday gas station job to put food on the table for $12 an hour and break my back. And now I need arthritis medication. Like, and they're like, but yeah, if you just go on Google, on Instagram or whatever, and get 8 million followers, makeup people will pay you to advertise. Like, why didn't I think of that? Like, it's just, I think it's apples and oranges. And I'm not saying, because I know a lot of people who are our age group that have shit work ethic too. So it's like, I think it's just I think people are just emotionally, physically, and financially exhausted from trying to exist in what is supposed to be the greatest country on earth. Bullshit. And I'll probably get hate mail for that. I don't believe in American exceptionalism. That's me. It doesn't mean that I'm not proud to live here, but I don't believe the bullshit. Like, I just don't understand how, like, we are so blessed to live in a country that is not constantly subjected to war and things like that. And that's a privilege we have. That is why, you know, when 9/11 happened, it was just that, talk about a reality check. Wait, what? Because we don't have to deal with that on a regular basis. That's called privilege. You know what I mean? Oh, hold on a second. Bruce, get out of there. Bruce, get out of there. Get down. What are you doing? Sorry, I mean, we can keep it real or you can edit that out. I don't care. My cat was trying to get in my sink into my steak that I have thawing. Anyway, so I don't know. I
was not suggesting that the younger demographic doesn't have work ethic. I was suggesting that the advent of electronics and technology has replaced some degree of, and I had a thought, and then Bruce did his run in, and it derailed me.
I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Look, I know that there's young people out there that are doing the damn thing for the right reasons and trying to do it the right way.
Right.
And that the society that is right now provides a tremendous deal of resistance, and they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure how to overcome, how to work around, and I appreciate that. Like the guests that you've had on here, those folks are prime example of that. My issue is the littlest thing that doesn't go their way, and in the grand scheme of things, as a drop in the bucket, starts to become oh my God, the fucking sky is falling. It's not that deep. You have missed a layer of the foundation of what's truly important in life, and it's because a portion of your upbringing, which should have been a more human to human type of scenario, has been replaced by electronic or by some degree of technology. And obviously, with that, that's going to alter how they view the world, how they go about things. That's my point. I
Yeah.
know there are shining examples that there are things in our society that are desperately fighting to the surface that this is possible. That, despite all the bad shit that is happening in the world, and you can go no further than social media, turn on the TV, listen to the radio, it doesn't matter. It's on full display. If you want to focus on the negative, you've got a lot of opportunity out there to latch yourself onto that. But there are those that are trying to bust through that wall of negativity and show the world, show themselves that there is possibility of positivity and happiness in the world,
Yeah.
and which leads to success on many levels here.
Well, and I think, and I could agree with you on that. And I do think that there's, in some ways, we, what do we say? Like, and I don't know, I've mentioned it multiple times. By no means am I a perfect parent or a perfect person, but Charles and I have always tried to live out our beliefs, not only to help other people, but for our kids. So we don't just say, hey, this is what we believe. Or first of all, we've given our children the freedom to use deductive reasoning and logic to come up with their own theories and outcomes. Like, we don't force our beliefs or our ideologies on our children. However, I do think that, I wasn't raised in a situation, I wouldn't say I was forced, but I was absolutely exposed for a very long time to traditions, beliefs, and ideologies of my parents. And it took me, there was a point where I came up with what I would deem common sense to figure out what doesn't align. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. Something that this does not jive with my spirit. And it wasn't that they were teaching me bad things. It was just, I didn't have to believe or identify the same way as my parents. And I think that our generation had kids that allowed them to explore their own, use their own opinions and learning tools to come up with their core values, right? And so, but for us, we very much are active people who believe in service and believe in walking our talk. And so when you do that, your children learn from watching you do that. And I also think as a society, we have a lot of young people who are watching adults in government, business, world leadership, economic development, you name it. And we have a bunch of freaking crybabies running the world. That's what's going on here. And it's almost like, what's that word? Like subliminal messaging. Like, it just subconsciously and inherently influences our society and our culture and our kids. And we're watching, like, can I just like backtrack? I'm sorry. Like, I didn't even know where this episode was going to go today, but like, here we are. Can we go back to a couple years ago during COVID and masks in school board meetings? We had children trying to go to school and just like, oh, we can finally go back in person. Okay, we got to wear this mask. I literally witnessed grown-ass people screaming at children and physically fighting. Just in Fenton, there were
Lake Fenton.
Punched the principal in the face. Like, no offense, January 6th, we didn't get our way. Someone didn't win a frickin' election. Let's go all down to the Capitol and let's put on horned hats and kill people and cops and injure people and break into the White House. What do you expect these kids to think? This is how adults are behaving, fighting over and we're not even just having heated civil discussions any longer. Now we're storming capitals in costumes. We're doing, like, what do you want our kids to do? Like, we didn't get our way. Let's like, this is simply the world we live in. And I think that it is so important, because as a double check with your daddy. Thank you. Sorry. I'm always momming, even when I'm podcasting, folks. The thing is, like, man, it's like, I told my husband a couple weeks ago, I'm like, man, you can't even talk about this subject right now. It's going to get crazy. But I feel like we're weeks and weeks into this now, and I feel like I can allude briefly to it. Talk about, like, the way young people are watching adults behave. My little spirit has been so sick, and I mean physically sick, over this issue. Talk about reality check, talk about privilege, the fact that we get to live here. I mean, first of all, we had Sky Theaton on in the past talking about the Be Smart program. Like, okay, we have our own problems, which is you can't go to the grocery store without getting friggin' shot by an AK-47. Like, we have an epidemic of gun violence in this country. That is our burden to deal with. We've created it. We are living with it. And there are solutions that nobody can agree on to help at least reduce it. But in other countries, so example, what is the big talk of the news right now, which is the war between Israel and Hamas? Okay. I am not going to deep dive too deeply into this because it's such a contentious subject, and that's not really what my show is about. But I am going to talk about a reality check, and people, like, I don't understand how this doesn't make sense. Like, I have watched the news. I have went and looked at documentaries. I have watched interviews with people from both sides. I've seen, I know people who feel very differently about this whole thing. Like, I've absorbed a lot. And to me, I literally don't know how this is this complicated for people over here, like in America, right, who have very strong opinions about what's going on over there. And I'm like, okay, can we just take, like, the history? Can we just, like, remove the history of this land dispute and whatever, and talk about just the last 35, 40 days of what occurred? You had a terrorist organization that runs a country, and you have people living in that country that would literally be the equivalent of saying, if you don't care for our governor, right, Governor Whitmer, if you're not a fan of hers and she says some stuff and you say, that doesn't represent me, that's not what I believe, but I live in Michigan, and we live in Michigan in a free society where we could just go, you know what, I guess I could just move to Ohio if I don't like my leadership. The people in Gaza don't have that option. There's drones everywhere. There's checkpoints. They live in a pseudo prison of a land, right? They don't have that freedom. So think about the people who live in a space, any space, and you somehow have someone running that space who does not align with who you are. You're just trying to love your family and raise your children and have dinners and go to church or to the temple or the mosque or whatever. Like, you're just living your life. And you talk about paying the price for the sins of others. You have this terrorist organization that pulls this bullshit in Israel, and brutally, like, just brutal shit, like, not just shooting people up, like, just mutilation and raping of women, and, like, just awful. And all these people died. And then this country retaliates, which, don't think, hello, we went and attacked Iraq. Who wasn't even the people who took us down our Twin Towers. Right. Like, why are we so holier than thou? We've pulled this bullshit. But we still, and don't get me wrong, there's no way in the time when we did, our I hate to say retaliation, but our response to 9/11, innocent people died. make no mistake, we used to use the word insurgents, like innocent mothers, children, like tons of civilians passed in war. That's the casualty of war. But we didn't go in with the intent of just saying, well, I guess we're blowing up schools and we're blowing up hospitals, but whatever. Like, there's international rules of war. And I think that there are so many people torn on this because Israel is our ally. We support, obviously there's all of the past of the Holocaust, and like, I get it. I get where it's a touchy subject, but I think that at this point, I just don't understand, like, the reality check of that, which is these people who live in this country are not the ones who pulled that crap, and they should be allowed to leave. If you're going to have a war where you're just going to destroy the whole damn country, we're literally targeting, and I get it, those terrorists are abusing that and they're staying in hospitals and whatever, but that does not justify murdering innocent people in your ability to try to fight a terrorist organization. And so I feel so heartbroken for the people of Gaza. I feel heartbroken for the people of Israel. And watching two government type entities having war, and who's losing? The people. Innocent families just like me and you, who are just sitting here today, like literally just could be sitting in their house, and then all of a sudden their house is bombed. You know what I mean? And we don't have to be exposed to that here. That is not a reality in America. And that is a privilege. Like, we can look at it on the news and have very strong opinions, but can you imagine, like, the starvation, like the terror, like the trauma? And that's a trauma that's generational, and it doesn't go away. And there's no, like, they don't have psychiatrists and mental health resources. Like, these are broken people who will never be the same. These babies, these children. And I don't know. I just watch people arguing about it all day long. And I'm just like there's no good answers here, right? Like, there's no good answers. And this is the world we live in. And there's repercussions for that, for us as a country, like for how we align or who we support. And hell, this has taken over. I just read an article last night. You don't even hear about Ukraine anymore. We're on to the next war. And there's still people sitting in Ukraine starving and trying to get out. Like, we are lucky to live here. We are lucky. But you can be lucky to live in a better, like, hey, I'm lucky I have a house. I'm not homeless. That doesn't mean I don't have problems or need, that there isn't ways to make a better life for everybody. And I feel like all of it can be true at the same time. You know what I mean? So it's just, my heart has just been so heavy this last couple weeks between stuff going on in my friend's life, struggles I'm dealing with, affiliations that I have where people are saying ignorant shit like we don't have food insecurity down the street from my house. Like, and I'm like, oh, like, it's the insensitive, like, it's very like me. Well, I don't have food insecurity, so everything's fine, because that's why I'm a not me, us person. And when I'm confronted with people who are very me centered and not us centered, it just, I get salty. I get so frustrated, because these are human beings just like us. And then and then just looking at the world, and any mom watching that, like on world news, is like watching, like, that could be your son, your baby, your grandmother, and it's just, I don't even know how as a species we've managed to survive this long. I really don't. I don't, like, and I don't know. I've thought back very much to my grandparents a lot lately, and thinking about World War II and Pearl Harbor, and like the trauma of their generation, and then the world, you know what I mean? And just kind of like, this isn't new. Everyone's been faced with their version of the Great Depression, and not having enough, and being able to supply for your family and feed your kids, and watching Jewish people be brutally murdered in gas chambers. And like, this was their news. And back in those days, they didn't blur it out. They just showed you. There was black and white pictures of just bodies piled up. And now, we try to, you'll have Anderson Cooper. This is very disturbing. And we're so numb. They're not even showing us the brutality. They're just showing us like letting your imagination take course, but we're numb to that because of technology, because of an over influx of information and video games, and like violence is just part of our culture. And I don't know, like it's hard to feel like there's anything to say here that is uniting, healing, or inspiring. This is a depressing ass episode. But you know what? This is the world we live in. This is the world we live in. And I think the best thing we can do, the only thing we can do, is just recognize that every moment of our lives is an opportunity to where you can extend a smile, pat on the back. I just kept patting you on the back last night. I was like, I don't know what else to do. I just like pat you on the back when I saw you, and like just I don't know, share your chicken with your neighbor. I don't know, like just some act of human goodness. And hopefully that's a seed that helps the next person get through their next couple hours or their day. And if everyone was doing that, then we'd at least be, I think, 20% better off, like, as a species and as a society. It's just, and it feels sometimes I just feel like it's just a brick wall. Like this, well, in 30 years, there'll be some other bullshit and my kids will be dealing with that. You know what I mean? And I think I even told somebody yesterday, okay, so that I will say this before I don't know, I want to get your final thoughts before we close out, but I shared with you off camera that I was sharing a story with someone about an experience I had, which was like 20 years ago. I'll summarize super quick, but Hurricane Katrina happened. All the people that had to watch that flooding lost their homes, dead bodies floating through the street, like traumatic to a whole city. And I was living in Houston at the time. They shipped everybody that was at the mega dome or whatever the big, dome thing was there, to Dallas, to Austin, to San Antonio, Houston. Like we took in tons of people into Texas who were displaced. And then 2 weeks later, another hurricane of that magnitude was heading right toward Houston. Well, strangely, it ended up diverting and going south at the very last hour. And so it didn't hit us, but everyone was super traumatized by watching Hurricane Katrina on the news. And then having all these people, who had been traumatized come to us. So can you imagine finally after living with 8,000 people in a football stadium for a week with your babies with no diapers and no resources, being shipped on a bus to another city and then find out it's about to happen all over again? I can't even imagine what that experience was like for those people. And for us, we were like, oh shit. And they were like, okay, you got to get out. We're doing a mandatory evacuation of our region. I sat on a freeway with a 1.5-year-old baby, a dog, and my ex-husband in a car. And it took us 37 hours to get what would normally take 45 minutes on a freeway. I was hysterical and people were crazy. People were running out of gas. They had no food. They had no diapers. You couldn't get anything. And so thankfully, we ended up taking a back road to try to go to my ex-husband's cousin's house. And he was able to come drive and meet us with some gas. And when he got out to and the guy was a football player, mind you, like big dude, 6'5" linebacker. And my ex-husband was a large fellow. And I'm going to tell you, people in suits and ties looking like reputable people you just see at the restaurant, we're trying to fight them, like physically fight them to get that little 2 gallons of gas. Babies were running around naked. Like I've never seen anything like it. It looked like a third world country at a gas station, and people went feral because they had to survive. And I'll never forget that experience because it reminded me, or actually it exposed me and educated me. And I get reminded of it recently that good people, like we are not I'm not a science person, Jason. Somebody corrected me yesterday. Like, what was it like? we're Homo sapiens or something, but like what were like the cavemen? Like there's a word for that. Like what the first,
Neanderthal.
yeah, like the human, like the evolution of human species, right? It was survival of the fittest, hunters gatherers. There was no like, hey, let's all get to dinner and have a charcuterie. No, it was like, I'll take your woman and I'll slaughter your people and I'll take your lion and we're eating for the next 6 months. That's who we are inherently. We are animals in our own way. And somehow we've gotten to a point where I think we forget that. And I feel like their DNA just comes out when you are desperate and you don't have, and you're hungry and you need to provide for your offspring. Oh, that's like mamas are like, oh, I'm so nice. Let's go to Target and get Starbucks lattes. Fuck with my kids and find out. We'll lift buses and take ladies down in the middle of Black Friday. Like we are not nice people. It's a joke. Like we have to survive. So I think to myself that people across this country, across our state, across my community, across the world, whether you're living in a tribes in Uganda or whether you're trapped in Gaza right now or you're in Israel or China or Hawaii or Australia, we're all the same. We're just people who have loved ones, we have parents, we have children, we have families, we have friends, we have jobs, we are roles in society, whatever your societal norm is. And that is the common thread that binds us, that we want to eat. Well, the hierarchy of needs, right? We have to have food, shelter, and I guess love or some type of, human connection. And I feel like we just forget it. It's lost. It's just lost sometimes because we're so inundated with the wrong messaging and bunch of gaslighting over what, like, let's throw out some shit that people can argue about and they'll forget about the humanity of other people. And I don't know, this whole last 2 weeks has just been a reality check for me. So that's where this episode came from. And obviously I'm quite passionate about all of it. Just a little.
Well, there's obviously nothing wrong with that because, what you've displayed very real feelings, and like we've talked about before, you're not the only one that feels this way. They don't have the platform that you do. So when you are expressing things of this nature, that it is so passionate, that it is so dialed into your approach to a lot of things, it's good that you do have that capability to get that out because you know as well as anybody, you keep enough shit locked down internally, it's coming out eventually, one way or the other. And generally it's not it doesn't produce all that great results. Now what I would say is I guess my approach at things is a little bit different, and it could be because I'm still, like, I realize what the world has become. I realize why the things are the way that they are, but I also have of the mentality that I don't subscribe to a lot of that philosophy because I've always been I don't know. I try to go for a lot simpler, way of life in a very complicated world.
Yeah.
Um, but you got to have reality checks from every now and again because if you're not dialed into what's really happening, you will allow the world to just pass you by, and then you are left behind. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to go about shit because everything has changed so much. So, like, I'm not delusional in the fact that I have to adapt. I do try to look for the silver lining in everything, and I've always maintained that. Sometimes you got to dig a little bit deeper, But what you said earlier in the show, and you're absolutely right, there are scenarios and situations where there just isn't a silver lining. This is just the way this particular thing is, and no amount of sunshine that you're going to shine on it is going to make that flower grow any bigger or stronger or anything like that. This is just the way it is. They built the building, and it
Well,
forecast shadow. You know what I'm saying? I'm using it
yeah.
metaphorically, but I
Well,
don't know.
I feel like, and I think there's a common ideology that we're so divided and so intense with our places and our feelings and our beliefs that in this country particularly, but really the world, that you're not going to change anyone's mind. So like, okay, I quit arguing on, like, I don't argue on Facebook with people about stuff. Like, I just don't. It's not, first of all, I don't find it productive. I don't think
Right.
it's a good place. I think I've always said that a cup of coffee can change the world, because if I sit down with you and we have a cup of coffee face to face, I'm a person, you're a person, we can get into it. But at the end of the day, we both got to pay that bill. We're going to go home and pay our light bills. We're going to go, you know what I mean? Like, we forget each other's humanity, when you are right about that on technology, because keyboard warriors, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that I don't say anything I've said today to particularly change anyone's mind. I think what I said is because, as you know, and I have mentioned often since the show started, I've taken a huge step back from my hats and my roles that I really never even signed up for. It's just, when you have a gift and a calling, you just do in the moment what you feel called to do, and then somehow you don't quite know where that road's going to take you. And that's what happened, is I got taken down a road for 4 years, 5 years, that I don't regret, by the way. You get to a point where your tank is on empty, and you just have to take that step back to be able to move forward in whatever the next version of your journey is going to be. And for me, I've always believed that and it is true. And then you can go back to other eras of our country during the civil rights movement, during the 60s, the Vietnam War, whatever you want to call it. Silence is complicity. And I may not be able to change the world, but being silent about human rights or workers' rights or socioeconomic rights, or the reality of, I'm one of that 62% of people living paycheck to paycheck. Like, I'm speaking from personal experience. This is my life. Like, so I'm talking about my reality, and I'm not alone, because 62, more than, like, I don't even know how many, I don't know what our population is, but it's millions and millions and millions and millions of people are moving the chess pieces just to get by. And I'm just here to say that you are seen, you are heard. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a player in a game you didn't ask to be in, and you're doing the best you can. And just have grace for the people next to you, and be thankful. There's your silver lining, that we are sitting here right now recording a podcast, and I am not worried that a bomb is about to be dropped on my house. That I am not going to be in a t-shirt in the streets, shitting in a hole with my baby. And I just send so much prayer and love to everyone on both sides of that situation, to the people in Ukraine, to people who are living in Nebraska, like, who are just struggling to put food on the table. Like, this is not new. And because I don't really have an outlet to talk about this, like, I'm not marching in the streets right now. I'm not griping at county, city council meetings about that. Like, I had to take that step back for my mental health. But these are deeply, deeply felt feelings, and deeply held values that I have about people, and I see the reflection of myself in people that with whom I have very different lives. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. It's just really difficult for me this last couple weeks. It's just been like overwhelmingly I'm an empath on top of everything else. So I just feel things in my body. It's just too much, you know. So I don't know. So all I can say is, like I said earlier, every moment is an opportunity to try to make the world a better place, and it in little ways, and it ripples. And if nothing else, maybe it just, you don't get to see the fruit of that sometimes. You just have to do it because it's the right thing to do and the nice thing and the kind thing to do. And you don't know that what you did for someone at the grocery store, how they might go home, and instead of going home and yelling at their kids, maybe they thought of it like it changed their mood. And now their kid didn't get yelled at, or then the kid wasn't a bully. Like, you don't know what the ripple is of your choices and your words and your actions. So we just have to, I don't know. I just try to focus on what is going to be the best thing I can do to be the best person, and just try to help where I can. And I think there's a lot of people out there doing that, and hopefully more. I don't know. That's where I'm at. So I'm really glad to chat with you and catch up today and record. And I'm glad I got to see you last night. I had the best catfish at Backroads Bar and Grill, Friday night fish fry. Oh my God. Went down to the laundromat, got me some fried fish, sang a couple ditties of karaoke, and came home and passed out. It was a great night.
I was going to say, all in all, it was a good day.
Yeah. So cool. Well, we'll see. Who knows what next week's subject will be. I have learned another rule. I'm not making any promises anymore on this show. It never works out. We'll just take it as it comes. So
we're doing the best we can here.
We can. That's all you can do. So I want to wish all of our listeners a very blessed and happy Thanksgiving coming up this week. And I am very excited. My daughter is cooking Thanksgiving dinner for the first time at her new apartment. So we're going to go over there, and I don't have to do shit except make macaroni and cheese. I had a great Friendsgiving actually with Sean Grugel.
I heard.
And some other friends of ours last week. That was really nice. So I don't know. It's even in the midst of all this nastiness and chaos that is our world, there's always something you can find to be thankful for. So I'm thankful for you, sir, and our listeners. And on that note, we will wish y'all a blessed weekend and happy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you guys next week on Say What.